Hi, I'm Sarah, and I speak on behalf of all my colleagues who constitute Beirut. Beirut is a young art initiative and exhibition space that is located in Aguza, a district of Giza, or Greater Cairo. And it's housed in a 1940s villa where we're currently sitting on the sort of front porch. And we have an exhibition space and also a library, or rather said, a small collection of books, mostly on art. And we have sort of makeshift office spaces as well as artist studios. And just next to Beirut, we live right next to Beirut, and we also host artists who are part of our program. Beirut was conceived in 2012 when we felt there was a lack of curatorially driven art spaces, in the sense of there not being enough directed initiative to put art at the center of a discourse that brings together questions, people, places, and artworks. And we felt that we could also contribute by becoming a base for some questions and curiosities that are also coming from within and beyond the international art world. It was never started with the intention to last forever, and I think to start something with the notion of like longevity or wanting it to like outlast you is maybe also like then not for the right reasons. I think it exists for, you know, for a certain purpose as a vehicle or a certain set of questions at this moment in time. And it might morph, it might become something else, it might stay what it is, it might be transferred like to other people, it might become encrypted in a set of artworks and then like no longer exist. But you know, in essence, it is what it is now, and I think this kind of is very much reflecting also the current sort of, you know, social and political like moment in the city as well. So we don't exceed that. We try to maintain our position actively within that. So a common question always is how does Beirut sit in such a densely sort of populated neighborhood like Aguza, and how does this work, and what the relationship is between our program, which is sort of dubbed as either like intellectual or theoretical or sophisticated or arty, depending on like which word you choose, and like the rest of Cairo, which is maybe, you know, more chaotic and like not so structurally that. And often the response is it's a bit like living in an apartment building. You have neighbors and you have a friendly relationship with your neighbors, but you might not necessarily always share the same interests. You might share certain interests at certain times, but not all interests all the time. And so this is generally how we would sit within our neighborhood. Then within the wider like cultural community, I would say that like Beirut very much is like at the heart of like almost like a very sort of like fluid moment in which many young institutions are being founded. And so with that, like, you know, we align ourselves also to these institutions of journalism, of cinema, also of art, of different forms, of music. And it becomes the experience of articulating the sort of specialization and the decision to focus on a vocation of art becomes interesting vis-a-vis the other institutions. So I think the tiers of audience and the tiers of publics like are like on many different levels. We also have a very wide readership. So we also have a lot of interest from like partner institutions or individuals located in Egypt, but also like in the wider like region, and also Europe and America, as well as Asia. And with that, we often like then try to expand our understanding of like who our public is at any given moment in time, and not to sort of, you know, like reduce it either to a specific locality or to diffuse it entirely into like an abstract international mass. So essentially we do what we do that makes life more bearable, and with that we make more friends, and so let's keep it at that.
This lack of curatorially driven cultural contemporary art programming in Cairo led us to think of a structure, a time structure. So the year now at Beirut, the programming year, is divided into 3 seasons, and each season is devoted to a set of interrelated questions in an open fashion are put out there to then have all contributors and participants to respond to them in a way. So each season consists of one main core exhibition and then is accompanied by a discursive program, but also we want to have a very strong educational dimension. So we also always want to have a workshop or a seminar happening, and there's lots of film screenings, artist talks, etc. The first season, or let's say all of our seasons so far, have been also very responsive to this idea of institution building as a curatorial act, in the sense that for us this also includes an investigation or an assessment of the cultural landscape here, the culturally institutional landscape here in Egypt, also vis-a-vis what happens internationally and all these questions that many people have who run self-organized institutions or artist-run spaces, etc. So there's a lot of curatorial/institutional models around there in the world, and some of them are really interesting, also on an economical level, but also in a way mostly how they become context responsive or try to achieve that. So all of these seasons so far have been dealing with kind of institutional questions. The first season was mostly dealing with the notion of labor and how labor is represented in image production and distribution. The second season was revolving around modern nationhood, let's say, or the modern nation state, and how that state has emerged as a quite rationally driven model, but still entails a lot of mythological undercurrents, which are not so easily grasped. But yeah, then the third season we dedicated to ourselves, so Beirut made some time for itself and asked the big question, what is an institution? So we came up with a program in collaboration with a collective, curatorial collective called Form Content, who are based in London, developing a narrative exhibition project that emerged out of their already ongoing exhibition project that was continuing over 15 months, and it was mostly about narrative and language as an institution, let's say. And the fourth current season is mostly about pedagogical models and alternative schooling models. So it's about how we learn and what we learn in what way. And that's also in relationship to the landscape here in Egypt and the educational landscape, let's say, how privatization of schools here has changed really the situation for a lot of people and for learning as such.
In fact, we don't understand Beirut as having a residency program, let's say, in the traditional sense. We do host artists and we do have contributors from different disciplines, also with different roles, coming in Cairo for an extended period of time and working with us, but that's really part of our program. So we don't run continuous open calls. It's actually, in fact, not on an open call basis. But for us, it's also a way to work, let's say, more deeply with our contributors and the participants of our program anyway. So for us, it's very important also that people have the time to actually come into Cairo, understand the space or understand the context, whatever they're actually contributing with, let's say. And we don't understand the residency program also in a traditional sense because, there are many residency programs already, so we also don't feel we need to, create a space that is there. And there is actually quite a big distribution of artists, let's say, or movement of artists a lot, especially foreigners, of course, and especially Northern Europeans, or like coming from very specific geographical locations, because of course coming here also has a cost and needs funding and grants and so on. So clearly certain parts of the world are more facilitated in doing that than others. So in this sense also, that's also why we don't have such a residency program approach or understanding, also because our contributors actually come in fact from different parts of the world, and it's not really based on certain support from certain countries also. So on that premise, something that is important for us, in fact, is not just the distribution, let's say, of artists who come here, research, and then leave again, but actually, for us, it's very important also the distribution of their artwork. So something that we feel as missing in a way is the space and the platform for often local artists to present their work. So more and more artists are born and grow up here, or artists come here to be inspired, let's say, and then present actually their work elsewhere. And that's something that we want to invert in a way. We want to actually bring back these projects here. On this premise, we've started actually something that we call the Beirut Collaborative Commission Program, in which our idea is to create partnerships in order to commission works to local artists, or let's say also works that stem from a deep reflection on the context, and find the means, infrastructure, as well as of course funding, to actually present these works here before elsewhere. We have different levels of collaborations, and collaborations for very different reasons. In fact, we don't collaborate only with institutions that are exactly the same as us in nature, but we're actually very interested in collaborating with institutions that are very different from us. Because institutions that are exactly the same, of course, have probably exactly the same reach, have a similar audience, have probably similar means, similar infrastructure, similar funding. It's in the moments in which maybe collaborations happen with different institutions that are different in nature as well as in structure or in possibilities, that maybe something that you could not do on your own might come up. Not only, of course, so locally, for instance, we collaborate also, very strongly with different institutions from Cairo. We've built, also created a network called April, with institutions that are located in different areas. One is in New York, one is in Lisbon in Portugal, one is in Northern Ireland, one is in London. So in, let's say, parts of the world that are completely different, and in which the context is completely different, but in which we feel we're sharing a programming in a way, or an understanding of our institutions, even if infrastructurally we're very different also in that sense.